That's Keo. And this is our very first porncast. We've had a couple issues. This is probably about our fourth time starting the broadcast. Everybody on Periscope has had to suffer through all three because I haven't been restarting for Periscope. So sorry to you guys. Now, one of the things that we are doing, and I have two different computers running with two different keyboards, so I keep grabbing the wrong shit. We do have the chat live for anybody who is watching, so you can feel free to chat with us and interject. As you may have annotated from the title of this broadcast, we're talking about CME, Creative Mind Energy comic book creators, as well as talking about over-sexualized comic book characters, which we'll get to that in a minute. First, we want to talk about our good buddies over at CME. Now, CME are the creators of such comic books such as The Gifted 1 and 2, Deadeye, and another one called Dixie Vixens. Now, we're going to start out by talking about Deadeye, because that is the most recent one. Now, CME are award-winning comic book creators. These guys won Indie Fab 2014 for The Gifted. I think they're in the running. They were in the running for Indie Fab 2015 for The Gifted as well. And their other comic books have won other awards as well. Absolutely excellent writers. We've all read their comic books. Now, what have you guys have all read Deadeye, yeah? Or I don't think Keo's read it, but you two have read Deadeye. Now, Deadeye is their most recent full release. Now, obviously, we got to read it a little bit early because we got the hookup. But the essential basis for Deadeye is it's a classic Western. Now, the one that we really want to get to talking about after this is we want to talk about The Gifted because there was some things said that we want to address. Now, the one big thing is that this comic book just came out. It was picked up by Walmart, so if you guys want to pick it up, you can. Feel free to go online and purchase it. Support the creators. They're absolutely spectacular. You will not regret buying this book. It is amazing. But what I want to talk about is I want to talk about The Gifted. Now, The Gifted is one of those comics that just, it kind of takes you by surprise a little bit. What did I do with that? What is it? Oh, it's okay. There we go. All right. Now, The Gifted doesn't have any real dialogue. There's no dialogue boxes. There's no real speech in it. Now, you guys have all had a chance to look at The Gifted. What do you guys think about the comic in general? What stands out to you the most when it comes to just kind of the interior of the comic?
Well, I think that because of the lack of actual language, there is a focus on the imagery enough to show a type of emotion.
Well, and you said the emotion that they were able to get with the animals in that was real impressive.
Now, okay. I think that this is the second one. Now, something I wanted to talk to you guys about. Now, like it went just right here on the back. You guys notice the big sound effects on the comic book, right? This is what I'm talking about. Big sound effects for the comic book. Bang, yelp. Now, what do you guys think about that? How do you think that fits in with the comic book in general? Do you think it looks a little bit out of place?
I think sometimes it takes up too much of it because, I mean, obviously right there you're not really sure what's going on, so it gives you a more of a direct idea of
okay.
What just happened.
So, and this is what I want to talk about because there is a podcast called 11 O'Clock Comics Podcast. Okay, now the 11 O'Clock Comics Podcast reviewed CME back in April. Yeah, well, they reviewed him a little while back. What did I click? There we go. And they agreed with basically what we've said. It's a spectacular comic. They've done really well. But what they failed to notice about the comic book is something that's very important. And they complained about this. They said essentially the same thing, that this is too overpowering. It's out of place. It does not do well in the comic. And that is kind of missing the point. Now, I'm going to explain it to you guys because this is how I understand it. Now, the comic book itself is very natural. It's very light. It's very flowing. Everything is very very
I don't know if I'd
organic.
call that light.
Huh?
I don't know if I'd call that
Well, but
light
it's
in any
very
sense of the word.
well, no, no, but it's got this. It's just this very flowing, very beautiful comic-ish
yeah,
thing.
it's beautiful.
And hello, Tony. We've got and it just overall the colors and the black and white, they kind of meld together very nicely.
Yes.
And as the comic book goes along and as nature starts to take back more, because essentially the basis for the comic book is that man has destroyed Earth, man has destroyed nature, and Mother Nature has given cognizance, has given consciousness to animals. And that's the basis for the comic book. And as we see this progress in the book, like you start out, and you've got again the very big, large, squared industrial text, and it's all very, and it's very prominent. It almost overpowers the pictures. But then as you go on and you get closer to the end, the comic starts to take on color, and it starts to get a little bit more, you know, earthy. It gets to become more colored. And that is because as the animals start taking back nature, the world starts to regain color. And the purpose of this large industrial text, it's actually a part of the commentary. The large industrial overpowering text is a part of this story. It tells how humanity, mankind, industrialism, how it overpowers nature, how it's constantly overlain and on top, and always trying to put itself out in front, and this huge air of self-importance. And actually, as it goes along, it gets smaller. You notice that the on the back of volume 1, it's very big, very, very large. And then on the back of volume 2, very, very small. Because as nature takes back nature, there is less power given to man. So as the comic progresses, not only does the text get smaller, but they also change the font. So it is a part of the commentary, and that's what these guys over at 11 O'Clock Comics, they really missed. They missed that that was intentional. And I thought it was funny because I'll link to the podcast below. You guys can go look it up. It's 11 O'Clock Comics, and 11 O'Clock Comics podcast is by Vincent B., David Price, and Jason Wood, and they talk about comics. They're actually a great podcast, but I just thought it was interesting that they managed to catch all of that about these comics and then miss that very huge, just obvious motif. It was interesting to me. Now, I don't have it here with me, but the next thing that we're going to be talking about is Dixie Vixens. Now, first impressions of Dixie Vixens. What do you guys think? Because I've had a couple of you guys read it. What do you guys think about Dixie Vixens?
Can I go back to?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the reasons that they don't grasp that concept is because the lack of the idea of having the rule over something and destroying something as humans have done nature. Like people think that as ruling over something it means destruction instead of taking care of. And in the concept that, well, in the reality of what humans do now, it is complete and destruction in trying to fulfill our wants, not just needs but wants. It's more of the downfall of that, and that when you say that, it makes it more in your face. Like, this has to do with what humans want, and we think that these animals and these creatures and these plants are in our way of living.
Well, and that's essentially that. And I actually spoke with the creator of the comic book, Damien Wassel, about this, and he confirmed that my intuition about it was true. That indeed, as they're going along, the text does change because the text is a part of the commentary. The sound effects are a part of the commentary, and as the story progresses, the commentary does change, and the commentary becomes that the animals are becoming more powerful, the nature is taking back itself, and that mankind's evil is lessening its hold over nature itself. And that's the whole commentary. And again, I really feel like it's odd that these guys who have over 400 episodes, over 400 podcasts of talking about comic books missed something that's that big. Like, it's huge. So anyways, I wanted to address it because it was something that came up a while back. We were supposed to start this podcast a few months ago, and we didn't. And it was one of the main topics that we wanted to talk about. So, do you have anything to chime in about, just in general, about the gifted?
Not necessarily. It's just beautifully done.
I agree. Nathan Gooden has an absolutely incredible style, and the Wassel. I always want to call him Nathan Wassel because we always see him with Damien and Adrian and Damien. There's Damien Jr. and Damien Sr. There's two Damiens in CME. And they're all Wassels, and then Nathan is Damien Sr.'s nephew, and he's Gooden. His name is Gooden. So I always wanted to call him Nathan Wassel, and it's it's very confusing. But CME did just launch their first full issue of Deadeye, and it looks spectacular. It's got a beautiful red cover. I think I actually brought up a part of it somewhere in here. Yeah, that's what it looks like, and it's absolutely incredible. I actually have, funny story, the first set of prints that they got of these test prints were printed all wrong, and red was overpowered in the entire book. So they got about 200 issues of this that were completely printed wrong with the wrong colors. And the colors are very, very important to CME in the way that they make comic books, because it's part of how they tell the story.
Yeah.
So now Damien Jr., who is essentially runs PR and does a lot of the mainline business stuff, he wanted to burn them. Like, he wanted to just get rid of them completely. And he said that to me. He's like, I would rather no one ever see these than us even. He's like, I will give some to a few people, but I would never dream of selling this other garbage. Was something, and it was funny. So I actually did manage to talk him into selling me one as opposed to giving it away. And he wasn't happy about it, but he did it. And it's interesting how important those things are, and you don't really see that as much in comic books anymore. There's not that kind of level of passion to create and that attention to detail, and it's all run by a family. Like, the entire thing is run by a family. Even Adrian Wassel, who is the primary writer for Deadeye and Dixie Vixens, even his girlfriend is a major help with everything, and it's just interesting to see how the family affair works. But if you guys haven't checked out CME yet, they are absolutely spectacular. I highly recommend going and checking them out. Their comics are absolutely incredible. They're one of the very unique artists that we've worked with, and I highly recommend them. So what we're going to move on to next is their more controversial comic book, which is Dixie Vixens. Now, what do you guys get from this at a start? What do you, just from the cover, what does it look like?
Well, from her posture and the choice of colors that they chose to use in the picture, I would say something kind of darkish. It looks pretty grungy.
Well, and that's grungy is an accurate description, yeah.
Yeah. From the pose, you have the sexy heroine who might be a journalist, something, with the bad guy, obviously in the background, who is your stereotypical middle-aged white guy smoking a cigarette, and it screams conspiracy. Like that picture screams conspiracy.
And what do you get from it?
Yeah, I was thinking something like Dick Tracy-ish.
So, in the words of Adrian Wassel himself, it is a grungy, sexy, neo-noir detective graphic novel. That is, in his words, that is what this is. Now, what is it that about this that would strike you as different from say The Gifted or Deadeye? What is it that kind of sets it apart?
It's not people.
Well,
No,
that's you're correct. Is that it is a little bit more people centric, whereas even Deadeye is more focused around the struggle as opposed to the people.
There's a lot more conversation in Dixie Vixens than there is in the other two.
So it kind of breaks their mold a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The drawings are different style. The way that they tell the story with color is different in Dixie Vixens.
It's more bound, like curvy.
Well, it's still got a little bit of the Nathan Gooden touch because does got his colors in it. You can definitely see his style in the way that the color is done. But they do have another artist who actually helps with the character concepts, and that gentleman, I believe, is responsible for the conceptualization of the characters. But don't quote me on that because I'm not entirely sure. But it kind of looks like it's outside of their normal range of motifs, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's because it is. Now, this comic is their first comic that has ever been criticized. And people are saying, it's kind of stereotypical. The sexy characters just don't really fit in with the motif of like this deep storytelling that they normally do, and it's just kind of got this stereotypical comic book thematic element to it. And I kind of want to point out that that is the point. Because as brilliant as this is, and as award-winning as this doesn't sell comic books.
So the masses don't want that kind of stuff.
While we personally, we as comic book lovers can love and enjoy and appreciate the absolute just incredible uniqueness of telling a story with no words and having a protagonist that doesn't speak, but not because the protagonist chooses not to speak, but because the protagonist doesn't have a language. But that protagonist's language becomes his facial expressions, his emotions. And then the same thing with Deadeye. Deadeye is just this absolutely incredible story focused around a struggle and hate and, things like that. Whereas we're not used to deep stories like that from comic books. As deep as it ever gets is Uncle Ben died again. Like, that's about as far as we ever get. So, this comic book is CME's, this is their shelf filler. This is what they're using to, and that's not to say it doesn't have story, because it has a spectacular story.
Yeah.
It's essentially 3 women on, I don't know if it's spring break or something like that. They witness a race crime, and they get all caught up in it, and I'm trying not to give too much away, but they get all caught up in it, and then they're trying to solve this problem in this town, this conspiracy of underhandedness that is going on.
Well, basically killed in the process.
Yeah. And this one maybe, these have no movie appeal. Nobody's going to make a movie or a TV show out of this.
Brother Bear. No,
yeah,
I'm joking.
Yeah, right. And this one maybe, but the story isn't something that the mass population would want to go and see in a film. It's too provocative, it's too thought-invoking, it's not something that gets made into a movie. Whereas this maintains their picturesque element, and it allows for a little bit more of shelf candy. It allowed, like, even the advertisements for this that they showed, like, it had all 3 girls, like, it had nothing to do with the story. But it had all 3 girls in, low-cut tank tops standing behind it. I think we have a few pictures of us at the convention when they launched this idea. Yeah. And it's something to draw people's eye in. And the story is good enough, and it's in-depth enough, and there's enough behind it that it's still a high-quality story. But they had to do something that was a little bit more stereotypical in order to attract the masses, because you can't sell people ideas. People don't care about ideas. All people care about is give me a hot woman in a comic book and I'm gonna buy it.
It's intriguing that this will actually lead into our next topic eventually.
Yeah. So and actually, do you guys have any other commentary about it? Because if not, then we're gonna actually go into that.
Well, because after reading it, I did kind of feel like the whole, especially the conversations with the women, was highly stereotypical.
And written by a dude.
Yeah, like the concepts behind their perception of female conversation is hilarious. But it left you hanging enough to want to know where is this going to lead. What is it going to go
just
bad?
coming from a personal perspective, that might have a little bit to do with Adrian himself. But we're not going to say anything about that.
it did keep the page. It did keep you wanting to know. Okay, what is really going to happen?
And that's kind of the common thing that I've heard a lot of people say is that even though it was kind of a stereotypical story, it progressed so well and it was so well structured that you couldn't just stop on a page and go, okay, I'm done. You had to read it all the way to the end, and then the cliffhanger pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah. So wait. No! I have to wait. What's it been? It's been like a year?
Yeah, almost a year.
A year?
Yeah.
I'm like...
Since we got our first copy of DC Vixens, yeah. Okay, so, and actually, yeah, it does lead in nicely to our next topic, which... No, not that. that's the Wassels, for anybody who wants to look at their handsome faces. That's the guys. There we go. Alright. So a lot of you guys have probably seen the controversy floating around about this variant cover of Spider-Girl or Spider-Woman, I'm not sure. Is it Spider-Woman?
Woman.
Yeah. Spider-Woman, oh.
Yeah, this actually started
Check my
like
privilege.
a year or so ago.
And
girls and boys are sexuals.
yes. And I've brought up this particular set of this picture as a point. Now, Keo, this was your topic. You actually sent this to me, and I found it to be outlandishly interesting because a lot of people were saying that this variant cover is overly sexualized. Now, first, I'm going to start off by saying people will use the terminology over-sexualized to describe just about anything. People will look at something and be like, that woman has an ass. That is over-sexualized.
Like Overwatch.
Yeah. Again, that Overwatch is a spectacular example. An ending pose that showed off the backside of one of the characters. What's her name? Scouter? Tracer. I haven't played Overwatch, so I don't know the names, but showed off her backside, and suddenly everybody's like, "Oh, you're over-sexualizing the character." I'm not sure if everyone out there is aware of this, but all women have asses. They are directly behind their vaginas. All right. If you take a woman that is facing you and you turn her around 180 degrees and you go from her eyes down a bit, you're gonna find an ass. I don't mean to be crass about it, but
well, but they tried to have girls do this position and they found that it was impossible.
Well, maybe because those girls are not Spider-Woman. That would be my assumption.
I'm just saying.
They haven't.
I'd like to see a dude try and do that.
Do that one.
They need to get a contortionist to try it.
Well, but look at the angle at which her rear is, with her legs and then her back and then her head looking up like that.
Well, her head actually kind of looks snaky. Like her neck looks like it needs to be super long to be in that position over from her body. That's my opinion. That's not.
Yeah, well, I was not talking about the proportions because as far as I think that the head is out of proportion. Okay, the head is in an awkward angle. That's completely understood. But if you look at Spider-Man's head and this one over here, his skull is essentially laying against his shoulder blades. Again, these poses are not meant to be realistic in any way.
Yeah. Oh, they're exaggerated.
Everything about it is exaggerated. And the video that you sent me brought up a good point, is that since the institution of comic books, what they have used, minus like detective novels from like the 1920s and 30s and 40s when, you know, the Superman all started. If you look, they're all essentially supposed to be naked, and then it's as though their body is painted. It's like that with everything. You've got
the definition.
Yeah.
The definition is not possible with clothing.
No.
That they always have put out.
What did I do with it? Captain America. Are you telling me that is not an overly sexualized portrayal of Captain America? Because I guarantee you it most certainly is. Ladies, there is not a man out there that looks like that can move like Captain America does.
No.
There's not a man out there that looks like that can wipe himself. So.
That's
I guess I gotta point out there's not really much of a bulge. There's a little bit.
Well, look at the extreme shadow though. that's where the suggestion is.
I guess so.
And he's probably wearing a cup.
That's true.
I mean, as Captain America, you have to be prepared for a massive nut kick at any given point. So how and in what way does this differ fucking shit from this?
I agree that the same kind of clothing, the attire, is exactly the same.
Yeah, and the only reason why this is being made sexual is because somebody's making it sexual. I don't see this as being sexualized at all. In my personal opinion, I don't see either of those as being sexualized poses.
Okay, well, let's pose this question then. In actual porn, men don't usually crawl towards someone like that. The women do. in sex scenes in movies. It's basically saying that this is an object of sexual attainment.
Which I do agree with you there, but at the same time, that's pretty much the crawl at the side of a building pose.
Yeah.
Like
it should be.
Like a spider.
I think the
it's
thing
contextual.
is that most of the time though the women aren't seen in a power. It's more of a sexual position. And look at.
Well, here's
look
an
at,
example of that.
I mean,
That is oversight.
how many male superheroes will do those sorts of poses? Besides Deadpool. Deadpool doesn't
Deadpool
count.
would, but that's
Now, that's Deadpool. That's the point.
here's something that I do want to point out though, is that a lot of comic book characters, even though they're on covers like this, and you see a lot of imagery like this, the women are usually the more domineering, straightforward, ass-kickery characters. There is not a single comic book character outside of like Poison Ivy and Catwoman who actually uses their sexuality as a weapon. I mean, even Starfire, who's kind of like this airheady, from another planet alien, I don't understand how humans work sort of thing.
That's supposed to be Starfire?
That's original Starfire
Yeah.
from. That's not Teen Titans Starfire.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I know. I was like, but that's not a big Starfire.
Now, admittedly, you don't often see men in these kind of poses, but on front of.
You could see Captain America in the walking foot.
Well, and my
Not with your hips slanted over and.
but men also
That's
can't do
true.
that with their
It's-
hips,
yeah.
so it's a little bit difficult. But there are several comics where Wolverine is completely naked, ripped out of his fucking mind in a very emasculated pose, which could be foreseen as sexualizing a man, because it's over masculated.
I think it's objectifying, not sexualizing. I think they're different.
I think that they're different, but in the instance of how the internet defines them, I think they're the same. Because we objectify and we sexualize in the exact same breath.
Well, it's the
On the internet.
Yeah. Well, it can be true, but that you objectify a man in the fact that he is an image, and nothing more. There's this image of a man, not a sexual object.
I mean, if X-23 was in the same way, because she also has claws. What if she was just naked and fighting people, and then it's like, oh no, she's naked.
Then it would be sexualized. Like,
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
man, it's objectified, but if the woman was in the same pose, it would be.
It's a sexual object.
It would be sexualizing.
Yeah.
And part of the problem, I think, is that we just sexualize women in general.
Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah.
that's true. Should we take into account the difference in men and women?
I
What
don't.
do you mean?
Men tend to be more aroused by like solid, not solid, like pictures or
You mean more visual,
like,
less?
more visual
Stimulus?
stuff, more visual stimulus. Whereas women have can be their arousal can be more toward like thought or reading or
Reading.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and so the
Damn store smart.
I mean,
Definitely relate.
I don't think that a guy would ever, if let's say one of the comic books like had a crap ton of erotica basically. I don't think a guy would complain about it being like over sexualizing the male characters by this erotica.
There's a two-pronged problem to it. Like, one of the problems is that because of women's status in society up to this point, there's this oversensitivity when it comes to the way we deal with women in media. So when it becomes this thing of sexualization,
I don't think I'd say it's over, but there is a
there in some instances it is, because
in some instances
just like this, and that's what I'm saying. It's like if you take a movie like let's use for instance, like, this is supposedly supposed to be something incredibly sexual for a man, but you take 50 Shades of Grey, which is by far one of the most popular books that has come out, and it's largely read by females. I'd say like 80% of its audience is female.
They don't look at us.
And, and it's one of the most popular books that has come out in the last 10 years. And it's basically smut. But let's take this
very much. It's beyond that.
Let's take and compare this. So this is sexualization for men. But then take the character of whatever the fuck his first name is, Grey, Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey, okay? And look at how that character is portrayed. That man is portrayed as being this strong, powerful, rich, sexual, abusive deviant, and that turns women on. No man went on the internet after that book came out and was like, this is a fucked up way to portray men. We're not all like this. We're not all abusive. We don't all want to beat you before we have sex with you. No man went on and said that. And that's what I'm saying. Is like there's this double standard when it comes to sexualization. Women are portrayed no different than men as far as outlying their assets on comic books. It's just that there are more parts of women that are sexualized than there are parts of men.
I do sort of agree with that. Because obviously there's several more parts to women in their form.
Which could turn into a whole thing about breastfeeding and over-sexualizing the breast, but we won't get into that.
Well, I also think it's environment. Like, a lot of it has to do with how people are raised.
I agree. And one of my biggest issues with this is that we're taking something that is as simple as a very... first off, the gentleman in the video that Kyo sent me made a good point. That this is a variant cover for collectors. So you don't even have to buy this fucking comic book. You can just walk past it on the shelf and not give a damn. But it boils down to people sexualizing things because they want to make them sexual. That's what it boils down to. People making these decisions to over-sexualize characters, that is on the people. It has nothing to do with the character itself. Because even the other variant cover, somebody from Elle Magazine, the gentleman in the video Kyo sent me, brought this up, said that the other cover, the cover where she's basically jumping up like this, puts her bosom too far into the limelight, and completely ignores the fact that her face and her head is the closest part to the camera. Okay? Again, I don't know if you know this, but 90% of women, barring the incredibly flat-chested and women with breast cancer, have breasts. And even then, there is still breast tissue there. Breast exists on every woman. Since we were looking at asses earlier, all you have to do is flip her another 180 degrees and then go up, and they're about midway through her torso. Okay? They are there on...
It's like at the top of the torso.
It eventually worked its way down there with it.
Okay.
Okay,
so we'll go 70% of the way up the torso, that's where it is, alright? Now, there's no direction you can turn a woman in a picture, and somebody can't portray it as being sexualized.
Right.
If you're picturing her from her feet down, you're exemplifying her vagina or her ass, or if it's from the top down, you're domineering at a woman. The only way that this would be solved is if they took women completely out of media, and then that would be sexist. Like, there is this oversensitivity to it, and 9 times out of 10, it's not even women in general who are complaining about it. Usually it's a celebrity or a group of men. And that's where the problem ends up being. Like, people are becoming oversensitive for the sake of being oversensitive. And a lot of people I know are going to look at this and go, he's a part of the PC culture and he doesn't get it because he's a white guy, yada, 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 yada. Fuck you, alright?
Well, but it's not just that. There's actually a lot of proof that the media, especially like advertising campaigns, over-objectify and over-sexualize women.
And they do, and I'm not saying that they don't, but it's in this day and age, it's not so much about women being less or sexualizing them as objects. In this day and age, it's about fucking marketing.
Go away!
Ding, 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 ding. He hit the mark.
Recording the podcast.
That slot was louder than that shit.
Oh my
No, it
god.
wasn't.
Jesus.
Ding, 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 ding.
No, it wasn't.
I swear we're professionals. Actually, hey,
Okay, so
Animal, come here and chime in on this.
I would also like to point out there's like 50% of advertising that has women in it are like worse sexually than this picture.
A lot of times they have less
Right.
clothes,
Like-
or there's quite a few that have portrayal of the Christian Grey
Yeah, well,
persona.
yeah. And then you take
the original name.
What?
Dorian Gray. Immortal Man.
Dorian Gray is the portrait of Dorian Gray is a very old novel.
Yeah, no, we've read it.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
going back to the point where you said
Let me say stole this.
it's not the
Oh, even
character.
that original. It was fan fiction.
Look,
I'm
you
sorry,
guys
go
know,
ahead.
you guys know how 50 Shades of Grey started, right?
Yeah.
It's Twilight fan fiction.
Well, and it was self-published.
Yeah,
They couldn't-
fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, they
Alright.
couldn't make their own
You were
stories.
saying-
Shit, I could post a fanfic. Why am I not making those? But anyways, my fanfiction of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. Yes. Oh yeah. What does Asian have anything to do with Final Fantasy? Leave me alone. All right. So you know how you said over-sexualization is not from the character but from the person itself. I mean, like that is a very true statement. I mean, you look at that Spider-Man post. Yeah, oh, okay, you can sexualize the lady, but what about me? What if I'm like, oh, I want a man that can crawl at me like that? Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's me over-sexualizing Spider-Man, right? Like, oh,
Well-
okay, his ass is in the air and
My mom did want
muscles.
Batman to hang from the roof of her bedroom, and
Yeah, no, we won't. But and again, it goes back to, and also this kind of puts it in it puts it in sort of a two-dimensional box as well. Like in this day and age, saying that that's offensive to women, I'm fairly certain that there are some very, very lesbian and bisexual women who would probably enjoy that. Like that to say it's offensive to women and that it's so two-dimensional and last sensory. It makes no sense to say that. It's just like saying that's not sexualized. I'm pretty sure there are some men who would sexualize that pose of Spider-Man. So it's
much easier to climb up the side of a building with a leotard on so that your clothes are take off.
exactly there is a certain
Aerodynamic
property to the superhero costume. And again, spandex looks stupid, so this is obviously not spandex. So spandex is it's the same thing that some socks are made out of. It's not going to cling to the body the way that superheroes have this expectation of body clinging things. Okay? So anyways,
they can do what they do.
exactly. They can't be superheroes if you can't see their nuts. Like that's part of the whole motif. So anyways, I thought that this was really ridiculous, and one of the things that people brought up as to why this was over-sexualized is because of this gentleman right here. His name is Milo Manara, and he is an Italian artist, and he's well known for his adult and erotica style. And they were like, oh, well, if it's not overly sexualized, why did they get this guy to do it? And again, the gentleman in the video, which I'm going to link to this video, because the gentleman made a lot of good points, is this guy is an award-winning artist. He has thousands upon thousands of adoring fans. And I think something like 40-some-odd% of his audience is women. And people are saying that it's offensive because he over-sexualizes women. There is so much more broadness to that topic than just what we allow to enter the media. Like, this in general is an infuriating topic. Because everybody wants to break it down to a two-dimensional box of women are these sensitive creatures who don't want people looking at them, and men are these over-masculated, just roid-filled pigs who just want nothing more than rifles, cheeseburgers, and pussy. Like, that's everything that men stand for.
America.
And it's just, it's infuriating, because it's not even remotely close to being true. It's nowhere near, where did the animal go? Is he still standing by the door, or did he leave? Animal!
I'll go get him.
Keep going.
Hey, by the way, that shirt.
So the whole point being is that why get this guy? Because he's an award-winning artist, because he's a brilliant artist, and because he's good at what he does. Now we can go back to He's a brilliant artist, but he still didn't do the fucking head right. But
I know, right? The neck and the eyes just throw me off. Like, just.
but it's also kind of a very flat pastel style. Like it's
I think
intended to be that
the
way.
exaggeratedness of the picture is supposed to be in reference to the fact that she's Spider-Woman, because they're like, oh, well, a spider is kind of like...
Everybody, this is the Animal. Animal,
Right.
say hello to everybody. We're streaming to Periscope and to YouTube. Say hello. And what we're talking about was we were reviewing some of CME's comics, and now we're talking about over-sexualization of characters. Tell me, does that arouse you? No, not Spider-Man, Spider-Woman.
You gotta ask.
I was talking about
I
Spider-Woman.
was thinking instantly.
So,
Good ass.
basically, Marvel was strongly criticized for this photo because they said that this is an over-sexualization of Spider-Woman. And there was and again, Elle magazine was one of the biggest advocates against this, and I don't know if anybody here has ever read Elle magazine. I know that I haven't. I've seen them on the stands. I honest to God thought Elle magazine was like Maxim or FHM. Like I did not know that it was I didn't know it was an opinion column. I had no idea, because all I ever see on the front of it is like Lindsay Lohan squatting with one arm blocking her crotch or something along that line. Like that's normally what I see from that magazine. I had no idea that it was an opinion column.
People who should be criticizing.
Right, yeah, like talking about the overlay sexualization of women. It's like, you know what magazine you work
Yeah.
for, right? Be like Playboy going on and being like, all of this thing with public nudity of women has got to stop. Slow down, Playboy.
Well,
Check
they
your privilege,
changed.
alright?
They changed.
Yeah, they did now, but it's like they just changed and then they go back and be like, hey, putting naked women in your magazine is wrong. Okay, Hugh, we got you. We see it. All right. It's just, I don't know. It's a little bit ridiculous that this is a problem. Like, it should not be an issue, but people are consistently making it an issue.
Focusing on the wrong thing is what I think they're focusing on.
They are. I mean, like, nobody can sit and stand and appreciate art. Like, how many people go in to the fucking the Getty Museum or any museum and go, oh, hey, look, excuse me, curator, I need this taken down. Venus is naked. That's over-sexualizing women. Excuse me, it's a fucking 800-year-old painting, probably older. You need to shut the hell up. The appreciation of the human body is not sexualization, and including the human body in art, whether it be a woman or a man. You need to, like, this is why we have this inequality. If we would look at this and go the same exact perspective that they're human and we're appreciating the human body. Individuals perceive it how you will, but if we as a society would say, look, this is just a thing. This is where it's art, it's appreciating the human body, the aspects of the human body, and what it can be, and just ended it there, we'd be fine. But instead we have this constant, consistent problem where we're talking about how terrible men are and how fragile women are. And it's neither one of those things is true. I'm sorry, I granted there for a bit.
Well, see, if we just go back to 1800s or back when modesty mattered, we wouldn't have to worry about this.
But then we wouldn't get to. But then we. Hey, come here. Come here, dude. You want something to say about Spider-Woman's ass? No? Come here.
He's like, what?
Come here.
Hey, transgender.
Hey, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here, buddy.
Whoa.
Come here.
There's a lot of people.
That's my nephew. Come here. Come here. Come here, buddy. Come here. Look. Say hi to everybody. Hey, say hi. Wave to the camera. Say hello, everyone. Alright, we're talking about Spider-Woman's butt. Alright? What do you have to say about Spider-Woman's butt?
Ew.
Come on. No, say
That's bad.
say artsy. Can you say artsy? Can you say artsy? Yeah, that is a guy. Very good. Okay, so to sum everything up, one of the biggest issues with this is the fact that this continues to be an issue. That every time something like this happens, there's this massive bandwagon that people just jump on, and then everybody wants to write an article about how terrible things are, and that kind of is what it is. But we should work. We got to talk about asses more.
I mean, to I guess this is still on the topic, but to give an example, I had a debate class in high school, and the subject was is like about kind of like the same subject, like over-sexualization, sexualization of the human body. And to give an example, I drew an angel, and she's ascending to heaven, and it says ascend above the ashes. And the reason she's naked is because when you go to heaven, don't think that you're gonna bring your swaggy outfit with you.
You don't get to take your Ed Hardy and your Prada with you.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, I got this cool,
Gucci
dress. I'm gonna wear to heaven.
You got in trouble for it in class?
No, it was an example in my debate class that I used.
Oh.
And I was sitting here like, okay, people when they look through my sketchbook and they find pictures like this, they're like, oh, cochina, that's dirty. Like, oh, well, what? Why is that dirty? Like, she's innocent. It's supposed to symbolize purity.
Well, and I would have to say that context matters.
Yeah.
Context matters a lot.
Yeah, true.
And this style of art for comic books has existed for the last 50 years almost. So to now start complaining about it and saying that it's victimizing one side or the other, or objectifying or sexualizing, is ridiculous.
Right. This is true.
Yeah, right? It's ridiculous, right? Say ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Come on, if a 2-year-old can figure it out, why can't the rest of everyone? Right? Like, he understands it's ridiculous. Say, people ridiculous. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. That is an opinion from the expert. This kid knows a lot about butts. His head is at butt level, okay? So, he knows everything there is to know about butts. Right? Say, I know everything about butts.
So this is supposed to be PG. Say PG.
I said butt. I changed from ass to butt when he came in. So we're talking about butts now.
What's the name of our president?
No, the podcast. No, the podcast. Go to grandma.
The face he made was actually. It's like,
But no, context definitely matters in these issues, because if you're taking something out of context and you're turning something that was never intended to be sexual into something that is sexual, obviously you're pulling it out of context. And that right there is the issue. And people constantly do that for sake of having a popular or a controversial opinion.
Well, that is the question, though. Do the artist intend it to be in
I was just
some
about
way
to say,
sexual?
did he make any statements in terms of I did or did not draw this with putting a little bit of sex appeal in?
This cover is supposed to be a recreation of that cover. These covers are recreations of each other.
With totally different backgrounds.
Yeah, he's like got a bunch of guys all rolled into like.
well, maybe they would have exploded again if it was a ball of men, because they would have been like, oh, she's a hoe because she tied up all these guys.
Hold on. That actually might play into this though, because we don't in the Spider-Man picture, we're seeing him he has just defeated people. Seeing him in a victorious stance. This is I'm a badass because I just beat the shit out of
But also, if you look at his right hand, there's a possibility he is fingering someone.
And she just broke into your room and crying into your.
See, and with her, there's no, in this particular picture, there's no victory. It's just, I
She
can crawl up the
conquered
side
a building.
I can crawl up the side of a building. And
Live
I
on
mean,
the 54th floor, no problem.
is she coming up to a battle? Is she coming up to meet someone on the rooftop for battle, or why is she crawling and not standing there at that point?
Well,
So I think a lot of the context has to do with the subconscious messaging that we get from pictures.
I agree. Animal, what do you think?
I would think that too. I wouldn't try to formulate it, but there's a difference in what they're on.
There's a huge difference in the message you get from those two pictures.
When I first looked at this, my initial interpretation of this is that it was intended to show that she was just like Spider-Man. Like, that was my impression. But that she is guarding the city. Like, she is overwatching the city. And the way that everyone else took that is that she's presenting herself to the city because her ass is facing out towards the city.
If she was facing away from the building, it would be different. But she is
at the same time, if her ass was pointing towards us, how well would that have gone over?
Yeah.
Like,
No, no, but she could have been coming off over
What
the
if she's just sitting there
side
with
of the
one
building.
leg hanging off and the other one up like this, and she's staring out over the
See,
city?
if she would have been, let's say, crawling over the railing on top of on the top floor of the building,
yeah.
and maybe putting a reflection of the city in her eyes, then that would have been more of a I'm looking out over the city pose. It would have been given the idea of watching over. But as it is, it looks like she just came up the side of the building and paused there. And
She definitely has doesn't same kind of detail.
You know, yeah, but say like there's less costume too. Like, there's less going on with her. She's kind of red with gloves.
I mean, and
Ignore the crying child in the background.
I also something that crossed my mind. Well, something that has to be said is the artists are very different. Now, if you're comparing apples to apples, you need a picture of Spider-Man drawn by the same guy.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out. Okay. But then also, if you look at the features, you have to ask yourself, what's my expectation of a superhero? Someone, man or woman, who is muscle bound and looks completely agile, able to defeat someone, or no, you have very, very soft features for her.
Muscular thighs and
You have these rippling muscles and stuff for him, but hers is, I mean, look at her arms. She does not look like she could pull herself up the side of a building with webs.
It's true that you know women are just because of estrogen are so softer. But if you're a superhero, the
So the
idea
question
that you're
is,
above an average person.
human.
yeah. And so if I were to say make these pictures equal, would you have to add definitions for muscles on her?
I
Like,
think a little
would you
bit
have
more.
to?
Well,
'Cause
but
I
again,
think-
it
I think
also
that's-
boils down to the artist. Like, this is this artist's style.
And see, that's what I mean. Like the comparison. I think if people wanted to complain about the picture, they need the artist to draw another picture next to it. Because what the people are saying by this is an over-sexualization, they're not really complaining to the world. They're complaining about the artist. And so.
And again, it also bounces back to like this is a variant cover. Like this is not the main cover. Let me actually see if I can get the. See, look there we go. Equality in the sexualization of characters. That's a picture taken by our own Mr. Smith, by the way.
Good picture, Smith. Wherever you may be.
Yes, wherever you may be.
Oh, the cleavage, yeah.
So.
Where's Spider-Man's cleavage?
I know. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, there's no people.
Or lipstick.
So like if you look here.
She's got muscles in that.
Yeah. This is by one of the artists who actually draws the comic book, and if you look, she has the muscle definition in that cover.
Yeah.
So and I don't know, but this particular cover is actually kind of androgynous for me. Like it's not.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, I think also there's a problem with the concept that a woman has to be physically strong and muscular to be a superhero.
No, but I mean, it literally.
But
like,
that could
I
be
think
said
like
of either gender then.
And there's probably, if you look far enough, that you're gonna find skinny superheroes.
If we're getting into like the
Robin?
specifics of what the spider
But that's,
fight
but
does,
that's also
what the radiation of the spider does is that it does make you a lot stronger. It gives you spider abilities. You know, so I mean, like you can see this in the first Spider-Man movie is that Peter breaks out and is, you know,
We don't talk about the first Spider-Man movie.
amazing movie.
I liked it.
We'll talk about how terrible that is in another podcast.
Those first two Spider-Man
What's
movies are
terrible is
great.
the third movie.
The third movie was
that's the bad one,
horrendous,
but first two are great.
Yeah, it's super good.
You mean that Sony movie with Spider-Man?
Mr. Toby.
Yeah, right. That movie about Sony that had Spider-Man as a co-star. Yeah. But anyways, like, it really just boils down to people didn't like the art style. Like, everybody's trying to make this a controversy of Marvel over-sexualizing women, but at the end of the day, they went to a highly acclaimed artist and said, make a variant cover, And let's see what is it. No.
It is curious though to see how if it was a woman who's drawing another woman, how that would look.
Well, yeah, and then a lot of people, like the L article was entitled, "This is what happens when men try to draw female characters." I don't know how to break it to you, but there are a massive bulk of female comic book artists already in the industry who draw characters that look exactly like this. I think that one of the primary artists for Power Girl, probably one of the most buxom comic book characters in existence, is a female artist. There, and almost 50% of comic book fans are female. So it's like it's trying to say that this sort of thing alienates female audiences, or this stuff is objectifying female audience. It's dumb, and it's kind of insulting to women actually, in suggesting that this in any way degrades them. I feel like that's insulting to comic book fans in general, because not only are some of these covers like this drawn by women, but at the same time they're enjoyed by women. They're enjoyed by comic book fans in general, because most of the time a comic book fan doesn't walk into a store and go, all right, which one of these covers am I going to get pissed off about today? Like, that's not the goal. The goal is that you love the character, you love the art, you love the artists, and that's why you read it. You love the story, you love the characters.
Well, something I just looking at this made me think about is that I wonder, like, because I think about like female superhero characters, like, and all of them I picture in my head have their hair out. Like, it's always like their hair is always very prominent, like Captain Marvel or Supergirl or Spider Woman or Black Widow or Black Cat. Like, their
Or
hair is
Power
always
Girl, yeah.
out.
Which
Yeah.
does kind of go against the idea of having skin tight clothes, because you have something to grab
but, like,
onto.
Yeah, that's something.
But
too,
it's
I don't
also
understand
a
why the hair was
differentiation. Like the femininity of the character is signified by the hair.
You can see it in in their bodies just alone, but like,
Now, the next thing that I want to point out is that a lot of people argue that this wasn't a recreation of that photo, like that these covers are not recreations, but and they do look a little bit different. But look at them side by side; they are almost an exact mirror of each other.
No, I agree. It's a representation, or it's the same idea, but it's not a copy in
No,
any
it's not.
sense of the
It
word.
is.
Oh, mirror. Yeah.
They mirror each other almost
other.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I see that it's a recreation, but it's just so different.
Well, I think that we've talked enough on the topic. Do you guys have anything else you want to say on it? All right. Well, everyone who tuned in, thank you guys so much for watching. The Porncast will be every Sunday at what should have been 10 o'clock, but will now be 4. Sometime between 10 and 4 o'clock is when we'll be broadcasting the podcast every day. Next week, the podcast will be available on SoundCloud and iTunes. Feel free to pick it up. It will be up there for free. Also, the video for this will be available on the mainline channel. For those of you that are watching on Periscope, the channel is the Otaku Rage Nation. And you will also be able to find the video and the podcast on our website, punktownhq.ninja. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This has been your healthy daily dose of recommended porn, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.